Hey everyone, what's up? I hanging out in the yard. Last night I was looking up at the moon, and it was a beautiful. I think it was the first night of the full moon, and I was just looking at it. It was gorgeous, bright and yellow. It looked really nice, and I started thinking about Ed because I noticed my own shadow in the moonlight, and I started thinking about Ed's moon dial. So obviously I started thinking about Coral Castle, and I started thinking about Ed's moon dial and how cool, it must be to be up there and look at a moon dial at the middle of the night in a bright shadow on a moonlit night and just be able to read the time. It's kind of cool. But then I started thinking about the moon, and I started thinking about Ed, and I started thinking about light. And I may not have posted this before on Magnetic Current. Talked about moonlight and Ed. When I started thinking about the moon was on Ed's property. He's got the moon dial, he's got the moon fountain, and he's also got the large crescent moon. So he's got 3 moons right there. Also, if you look at the last paragraph of Magnetic Current, he talks about light, and he also talks about rockets and the moon. Last 2 paragraphs. And I started thinking about moonlight. Moonlight's, beautiful, it's pretty. And then I started thinking about some other aspects of what Ed talks about, including how one side is stronger than the other when he talks about magnetic current, meaning north and south. And then I started thinking about, light. He talks about light being magnetic. So I started thinking about the lesser and the greater. So the sun and the moon, stronger and the weaker. So what I did was I was just bored, and I started thinking about Ed's pictures in his books, and moonlight, and I was looking through A Book in Every Home, and I started to notice a few things about it. I was looking at Ed's pictures. And if you look at Ed's pictures in A Book in Every Home, obviously his pictures are important. Marlinsky points out that they are important, and, I think they are. There's a lot of interesting things in them. And what I'm suggesting and saying is, on a beautiful full-lit moonlight, take Ed's pictures out, A Book in Every Home. This is the cover. I removed the staples on this copy a long time ago, so this is one of my mess around with copies. But I highly suggest to take some of his pictures out and look at them in the moonlight. Interesting, maybe. But if you think about it, on the cover of Book in Every Home, the crescent moon stone is very present, as is the moon fountain. Moon. And if you look on the inside, the first picture on the inside is the crescent moon in the background with Ed. And if you flip to the back cover, you've got more crescent moons. You've got the moon fountain with the crescent moon in the background. And you've also got Ed sitting in his chair next to the Florida table with the moon fountain in the background, which is actually an incomplete moon fountain. Must have been from Ed's place, not Coral Castle. But look at these pictures in the moonlight, and certain light and shadows jump out differently at you. You'll notice that Marlinsky, he talks about the first picture on the inside cover, which is that one at the top right there. He says that there's an M and a C, which is very prominent in the moonlight. Also, if you look at this picture at the bottom, right here, and you might be able to see it just from a camera, but the top of the castle, .E, which probably looks like a 3 reversed, if my camera's reversed right now, which it may or may not be. I don't know. But that's also very prominent to see. Plus, there is an L, kind of a really wide L, right in front of it, which is interesting to see. There's also another thing that I wanted to point out, which if you're looking at Ed's pictures in the moon and in the sunlight, I'm going to see if I can get this to where y'all can see it. But I don't know if it's going to come through. But what I'm looking at is through the sunlight as well. Look at Ed's pictures through the sunlight. Can you see how? Can you see how? It's home mirrored. All right, well, just look at his pictures through the light. Look at it through the sunlight. Look at it through the moonlight. Look at them. They're very interesting. Marlinsky makes a big point of pointing out how Ed's pictures are important. And they are. They're really cool. I highly suggest looking at them in the moonlight. And I also highly suggest taking them out into a bright sunny day like this and looking through the pages. Because looking through them, there's some fucking cool shit there. I'm telling you, you can read the word how right there in the corner. And what's interesting about that is Elias Howe was an inventor who invented a lock-stitch sewing machine in 1819. And Marlinsky also makes it a point to note that Ed talks about weaving and stitching and things like that. Now, I know for a fact Ed Leedskalnin was a really big fan. This is a hunch. I don't know for a fact. But Ed Leedskalnin appreciated and had a veneration for some of the most basic human technologies, the things that make us a culture, that make us a species that is an advanced technological species. And the most basic and simple of these things, farming and clothing, food, clothes, medicine, because hungry, naked, sick sucks. And, you know, we use food and clothes. We bring food and clothes. We basically, we're able to conquer this planet because we're able to cultivate food and make clothes to keep us warm. We're not limited to one section where we can live, you know. I live in the Northeast of New York. It's cold here for 5 months out of the year. I couldn't live here if it wasn't for food, clothes, medicine, heat, blah, blah, blah. Ed understood that advanced technology depended on basic industrial technology. And that's things like keeping us fed, keeping clothes on our back, things like that. These are what make us, even though, you know, computers and shit are really what make us advanced, those are the things that make us advanced. You know, that's what separates us from the animals. And I find that how, when you look through this, is kind of interesting. I just actually noticed that. This is the first time I ever looked up Elias Howe, and I just learned about him now. Really interesting stuff. But I don't talk about Ed that often. I don't talk about his pictures that often. I just thought that because I noticed these things yesterday and it was on my mind, I just wanted to put them out there, just to throw them out there. I don't talk about Ed that much anymore. But his pictures aren't just important. It's the way you look at them. You know, you look through them, through the light. There's instances in magnetic current where you have to look through the page in the light just to see the message on the other side. So I have no doubt his pictures are the same. I also have no doubt that looking at them in the normal sunlight and looking at them in moonlight or full moonlight completely changes your perception of how they look. So I suggest doing both. So anyway, 10 minutes deep. I wanted this short.